think this was my learning process. You know, it was actually real life school for me. And one of my adverse reactions in 1992 was to Zoloft. I was put on Zoloft because I was becoming a little depressed and I was losing weight because I was going through a divorce. And obviously that's a time that, you know, you're not really happy. So when I went to visit my general practitioner just for a follow-up visit for migraine headaches, he recommended that since I had lost a little weight and was, you know, a little despondent, that he put me on an antidepressant. And I was 33 years old at the time, and I had never taken any antidepressants, and I didn't know, because I have to go back and say, if you haven't been trained, even pharmaceutical reps, if they haven't competed against that category of drug, or if they haven't been trained about that category of drug, you can be just like everyone else and not have any knowledge about what they really do or how they really work. And that was my particular case. So I didn't recognize that they were stimulants, or I wouldn't have taken an antidepressant.
And what happened when you started taking it?
When I took the Zoloft, in only a matter of days, I started getting extremely agitated. I started having palpitations. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't drive. I was very anxious. So I called my doctor and I told him that I was having an adverse reaction to Zoloft. And he said, no, I believe what's happening is that your depression is getting worse, and so we need to increase the dose of the drug. And he told me to double the dose of the Zoloft, which I did. And when I doubled the dose, then I became manic psychotic. And if you don't know what manic psychosis is, it's pretty serious.
Actually, I do. A woman chops her toddler's arms off, runs around dancing with it, blood squirting everywhere. Women never act like that. A woman drowns 4 of her kids. Every mass shooter we've seen, every time. It's never not. I'm always shocked that it always is. You know, 12-year-old shoots his parents, kills his grandparents, goes and shoots the school. Every time, every case, they're on it, and really it's in the hallucinogenic category, the psychotropics are, and of course you know all of this,
correct.
And it basically puts you into this happy dream state until you, quote, have the bad trip. And with some people, it's always a bad trip. With, I guess, a few, everything is okay, still very toxic to the brain, very toxic to the body, and this is what drug dealers do. They get you addicted, then they string you out on more, and the average Texas foster child's on 4 drugs, some are on as many as 18. They actually murder children. WAI-TV did a big piece on it, where they know it. They just put them on, and they finally die. And then too bad, they got to go find some more kids to do it to. But you got the doctors, the reps, everyone's in denial because it's compartmentalized. It's a centralized group that's come up with this. Now, you're already out of the industry. Then this incredible devastation comes to your own family's life. Your sister basically believed their whole line, and something terrible happened. Tell us about that, and then I want to get back into this new film that's coming out about the subject.
Well, I had left the industry in 2000 extremely disillusioned and brain damaged myself, actually, from the drugs, and decided that I would pursue a career in natural foods industry. So I went to selling herbs and all that. Well, I was very interested in, you know, the natural foods industry, so I really hadn't investigated what had happened to me on the SSRIs, because when it happened in 1992, they were very new. So there wasn't that body of evidence and information that's now out there if you can get on any internet search engine and find something out about the SSRIs. But back then it was, you know, relatively new, and there wasn't a whole lot of information unless you looked in medical journals and things like that.
In fact, let me ask you this, Gwen. Back in the early 80s when they approved Prozac, it's admitted now, and this actually came out a long time ago, right around that time that you were working for them, but it was in a few publications, but not really publicly widely circulated, that they knew it radically increased suicide around 15%, which is a huge increase, and was actually a suicide drug. I mean, it really encouraged it. That was one of the main effects. And then here they are pushing it for depression. Did you ever hear that when you were in the industry? Did you ever hear anybody criticize?
Absolutely not. In fact, I only heard all of the positive information. The drugs were non-addicting. The drugs were benign. The drugs were not neurotoxic, all of that sort of thing. So I certainly didn't hear that information. But that's what I was saying, is I hadn't really investigated. So I was very naive myself about all of this information as to what was going on with this SSRI scandal. So in July of 2004, my niece, who at the time was a freshman at Indiana University, she was a pre-med student, former cheerleader, I mean, she was an honor student, honor graduate student, beautiful, beautiful young woman. She was in a car accident. And when she was trying to recover, they put her on very large doses of Vicodin, hydrocodone, and propoxyphene, Darvocet N100s. And she was on so many central nervous system depressants that she became depressed. Imagine that. And she also became addicted to the drugs. She told me she was taking between 8 to 10 Vicodin a day, and she weighed about 120 pounds. So she had a very serious hydrocodone addiction. And when she tried to withdraw from those drugs, she became even more depressed. And of course, if you look into the adverse reaction sections of any PI on this drug, you'll find that depression is very much a side effect of any kind of narcotic like that.
Well, in fact, any doctor, any nurse knows that when someone's coming off of opiate-style drugs, that they're going to get depressed. And that's 101, but now the doctors follow the drug company guidelines. That's what the AMA puts out because they're paid off. And so, you're depressed, you need Prozac. You need a serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Which one did they put her on?
Initially, she was put on Paxil, and she reacted adversely to Paxil, and after that, they put her on Zoloft, and following Zoloft, she was put on Prozac, and then ended up on Effexor XR, which she took for about 9 months. But Megan's situation, when she started reacting negatively to the drugs, she was diagnosed as being bipolar. And when they diagnosed her as being bipolar, then that brought in a whole nother cocktail of pharmaceuticals that they added, the Depakote and Lamictal. And she ended up at one point, when I reviewed her pharmacy records that I got, she got them for me before she died, because I was actually trying to help her recover, because this had happened to me. So I knew what had happened, and I was trying to tell my sister that my niece was having adverse reactions to all the drugs that she was on.
The story of yourself, Gwen, and then what happened to your niece. In fact, in this film, there are two families from Austin,
yes,
who have lost children and loved ones through all of this. But Gwen, please continue with what ended up happening to your niece.
Well, after my niece received a bipolar diagnosis and they put her on other pharmaceuticals, other restraining drugs, she tried to commit suicide on a couple of different occasions in a couple of different ways. And the last time she tried to overdose, and she took all of her Effexor, and she took 3 hits of mescaline, and she took all of her hydrocodone. Anyway, she ended up in the hospital, and when she was released, she had to come to be cared for by family members. And her mother lived in Cedar Park. I live in Cedar Park. So she came to Texas. And I started telling my sister, as I was identifying that she was rapid cycling, which is why she got the bipolar diagnosis. It's like the drugs will induce a bipolar state where a person will experience within 15 or 20-minute segments what a regular person who has a bipolar disorder would experience over a period of weeks or months. So she was actually going through this cycle of, teary eyes.
Which, by the way, the drug zone inserts say it does.
Exactly. And then she would get extremely depressed, and then she would hear command voices telling her to harm herself or to kill herself. And then she would go through a swing where she would get giddy, and she'd get extremely euphoric, and she'd be fine, and she'd be happy, and then here would come the tears again. And I told my sister, I said, she's having adverse reactions to these drugs, and the only way that she's going to get better is if we withdraw the pharmaceuticals and she starts to heal. So my niece had decided that she believed what I had said, and that's when I started my investigation. And when I got into the information, I was mortified. I mean, here I had been in this industry for 15 years, totally, I